Falls from height are one of the biggest causes of workplace fatalities and major injuries. Typically, in the UK, for example, falls from height are responsible for around 25% of workplace fatalities. Common causes are falls from ladders and through fragile roofs. The purpose of working at height safety laws, such as the work at height regulations in the UK, is to prevent death and injury from falls from height. This short course should give you a succinct overview of what you need to do either as a supervisor, a people manager or an employer to protect employees and others from falls from height. Let's get started. Work at height means work in any place where if there were no precaution that a person could fall a distance liable to cause them physical injury. For example, you're working at height if you're working on a ladder, on a flat roof. You're working somewhere where you could possibly fall through a fragile surface, or you could fall into an opening either in the floor or a hole in the ground even. It's wise to take a sensible approach when considering precautions for working at height. For example, a common misconception that we hear is that ladders and step ladders are banned from use. And that is simply not the case, as there are many situations where a ladder is the most suitable equipment for working at height. There may be some low-risk situations where common sense will tell you that no particular control measure or precaution is necessary, and the law recognises this. Before working at height, you should follow these 3 simple steps. First of all, avoid work at height where it is reasonably practicable to do so. Where work at height cannot be avoided, then prevent falls by using either an existing place of work that is already safe or the right type of equipment. And lastly, minimise the distance and consequence of a fall by using the right type of equipment where the risk cannot be removed entirely. Here are some managing work at height tips to consider when planning activities where falls from height may be a risk. Do as much possible work from the ground. Ensure workers can get safely to and from where they work at height. Once again, make sure you use correct equipment and apparatus that is stable and strong enough for the job. Make sure you don't overload or overreach when working at height. Take suitable precautions when working on or near fragile surfaces. Provide protection from falling objects. And lastly, consider your emergency evacuation and rescue plan. If you are an employer or you control work at height, for example, if you're a contractor or a factory owner in the UK, the working at height regulations apply to you as an employer. Employers and those in control of any work at height activity must make sure that the work is properly planned, supervised and carried out by competent people. This includes using the right type of equipment for working at height. Low-risk tasks that are relatively straightforward will require less effort when it comes to the planning side. Employers and those in control must assess the risks regardless. You should try to take a pragmatic and sensible approach when managing work at height. Factors to weigh up include the height of the task, the duration and frequency of the work, and the condition of the surface being worked on. As we've said previously, there will also be certain low-risk situations where common sense tells you that no particular precautions may be necessary. You should make sure that people with sufficient skills, knowledge and experience are employed to perform the tasks, or if they're being trained, that they work under the supervision of somebody who's competent to do it. In the case of low-risk, short-duration work from ladders, for example, the competence requirements may be no more than making sure employees receive instruction on how to use the equipment safely. For example, how to tie down a ladder properly, and appropriate training on 3 points of contact. Work at height training often takes place on the job and doesn't always take place in the classroom environment. However, when a more technical level of competence is required, for example, drawing up a plan for assembling a complex scaffold, then existing training and certification schemes have usually been drawn up by trade associations and industry to help demonstrate competence of operators. And this can be looked at alongside project-based experience. Let's look at the typical types of protection and risk control. We're not going to get into the detail of specific control measures here, but the type of protection used for work at height can broadly be broken down into two main types. And those are both collective protection and personal protection. Collective protection are measures that protect everyone who is at risk, and these must be considered before measures that only protect the individual. In other words, personal protection. Collective protection is equipment that doesn't require a person working at height to act to be effective. For example, a permanent or temporary guardrail to prevent falls. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, on the other hand, an example would be putting on a safety harness correctly and connecting it via an energy absorbing lanyard to a suitable anchor point. Roof work is very high risk, and falls from roofs through fragile roofs and fragile roof lights are one of the most common causes of workplace death and serious injury. As well as in construction, these accidents can also occur on roofs of factories, warehouses, farm buildings, and even domestic properties when roof repair work or cleaning is being carried out. The following are likely to be fragile: roof lights, liner panels on built-up sheeted roofs, non-reinforced fibre cement sheets, corroded metal sheets, and glass, including wired glass, rotted chipboard, slates and tiles. The following are all requirements in law that you need to consider when planning and managing work at height. Take account of weather conditions that could compromise worker safety. Check that the work area is safe before starting, i.e. the roof. Stop materials or objects from falling, or take suitable and sufficient measures to make sure that if it does happen, that no one can be injured. Store materials and objects safely so they won't cause injury if they are disturbed or collapse. And also plan for emergencies and rescue. For example, agree a set procedure for evacuation or rescuing someone from height. When providing equipment for work at height, employers should provide the most suitable equipment for the work. Don't worry, we'll provide a workflow to you to help you choose equipment and preventative measures later in the session. Take account of factors such as the working conditions, for example the weather, the nature, frequency and duration of the work, and also to consider the potential risks to safety for everyone where the work equipment will be installed.